You see this one right here, it run real deep, And this is why, they created Yahusha in that New Testament, and put it out there to the people because the oppressor, the Amalekite Edomite, he understood the prophecy. So even before then, right, when they was putting this thing together at the Council of Nicaea, right, and with the Piso family and also with Josephus, with the Flavians, even way back then when they was putting this thing together and they put that New Testament together, and they connected the dots with Josephus and they was really talking about, you know, a Roman Messiah, but then as time went on, it evolved into a future Messiah that's for the people and representing Christianity differently. But truly, what it really did was just make, um, you know, what's his son name? Titus, a God like forever, right? By transforming Jesus, from Titus, but he's really, representing Titus Jesus, that is, right? Because, that's the prophecy. So he's like a God forever now, right? Because they make Jesus, a man and a God, right? Demigod. But how it has evolved to where people is now worshiping, Jesus, Yahusha, and looking to him to come back and deliver them by the way they put these scrolls together, right? I'm talking about these Amalekite Edomites, how they, use their scribes and change things over time. They still doing it to this day, having people look towards a false savior, a false Messiah. It's been going on since then. So now it's transitioning into the quote unquote black community, the indigenous ones of this America or America land, right? The so called Negro is so hooked on this JC, this Jesus, this Yahusha. But more so now, they're more so hooked on themselves being the Messiah. This is why you got the Yaju Judas. You got a dude by the name of the Messiah. His name is Buck, I think, right? Then you got a female, she Messiah. Then you got so many of them now on these platforms, on TikTok and even on YouTube, and it's a reason for that. It's because the prophecy is this, that Yahweh said that the seed of David and the seed of Levite, or the Levites, the high priest line in the priesthood, they will be counted as like the sands of the sea, or and counted as like the stars in the sky, to where you can't count them. So it's so many seeds of David, and so many seeds of the high priest line of Zadok, and so many seeds of Levites, in the world today, to where they feel kind of mighty a little bit, arrogant, a little vain, but it's a lot of manipulation as well. It's a lot of wickedness going on because they claiming to be from a bloodline that's righteous and who serve Yahweh only. But they are pushing the New Testament just like Jesus, just like Josephus. You know what I'm saying? Just like the Piso family, just like the Flavians. You know what I mean? So it's like it started one way, evolved to another way, but it's all going back to where it derived. Right? See, but people don't understand why that's happening, why it's so present today. And you just look at verse 22. This is Jeremiah chapter 33, verse 22. Right? I recommend that you read the whole thing because the Septuagint, they don't even have this chapter nor verses in their book. They took it out because it would just refute everything they talk about in the New Testament right here, because it's the covenant that's made with the seed of David and the Levites and the high priest. So no way JC Jesus Yahusha can be king, prince, and high priest and God because he has a ongoing covenant forever with the line of Levite, the line of David, and the line of Zadok, the high priest line. It will refute all of that, stomp it to pieces. But we're gonna skip to this right here. Yo, check it out. Just to break it down a little bit more, so you give you a little bit of understanding what's going on around here. That Jeremiah chapter 33, verses 14 through 26, by the way. And this is what it's talking about. Primarily focuses on Yahweh's promise to restore the northern kingdom, Yasharala, and the southern kingdom, Yahida, Judah, emphasizing the coming of a righteous descendant of David, who will establish justice and righteousness. Right. So when you pay attention to these men and women, they are not establishing righteousness and justice in the earth. And the main thing they're not doing is directing you to Yahweh alone. They are directing you to them and to whatever ideology they're trying to feed you and take you all the way off course of the book, or scribing it or speaking differently than what's written. Or should I say, than what's said by the Almighty, right? So we're going to go to this right here. See, this is Hosea, and this to give a little more understanding and depth what I'm talking about of directing you to Yahweh first, right? Because if you read that Hosea chapter 3, verses 4 through 5, and it's talking about a period of time where the Yasharalites will be without key aspects of their, say, culture, right? Their nation or political life that they want to put, including a king, sacrifice, and idols. That's crazy because I want to talk about this more, this idols part, because I was like, why does it say that they will be without a king, ephod, and be without idols? I'm like, it was blowing me, right? It was throwing me off. But it's crazy because when you really read and see what they were doing, like, it showed their non-reliance on God, Yahweh alone. We always had some form of spirituality, right? Some form of ancestral worship or looking to. We never just looked to Yahweh alone. So he got mad at that, right? So he kicked us off our land and erased our history, and we forgot a lot of things, and he took a king from us, a high priest from us, him from us, and our idols, right? That that we were using, but we're still doing it. Just think about it, we're still doing it to this day. How many people talk about the ancestors? How many people talk about ancestral things and spirituality and different forms of divination? Like this showed me a lot. Like, I read this book so much, and I learned something new every time I read it. I read the whole book plenty of times. I've been reading this book for over 15 years. And I just learned more and more and more. And it's just like, dang, we still doing this to this day. You know what I mean? So it's like, so when Yahya talks about returning returning the covenant back to David, it says, let me see that I got it right here. No, I don't want to get to that yet. It says that you will return and seek Yahweh or God first, then David, your prince, your king. So you seek Yahweh first. But people today only seek these men or women who are claiming to be some kind of messianic entity who represents the Almighty on earth, when they're reaping all the glory away from Yahweh and keeping it for themselves to power up. But they're not leading you to Yahweh first, and that's not prophecy. Prophecy is when you learn your condition and what's going on, you learn who you are, through reading Deuteronomy 28, 15 through 67, Leviticus chapter 26, you read about the barakas and the curses, right? Then that's the blessings and the curses. And you learn like, dang, this is my people, this is who I am, this is where we are, and this is why these things are happening to us. The oppression, the cruelty, right? The unalivings, the situations that's going on in the world, the floods, the fires, the ice, the thing that's going on with the ice, the history of the powers that be, the elites, you know what I mean? Why they have dominion and why they've been treating us like this, why they can't stand us, why we still being hung from a tree. When you put it together, right, it's going to make sense. You know, when you read in that Deuteronomy, read in that Leviticus, that's why you got to return back to Yahweh. Then it says, seek David your king, because he's going to be about Yahweh and tell you to seek Yahweh first. Because then you'll know he's a righteousness and upright. Right? So then let's go to this. Right here it talks about Deuteronomy 20 and 36. Describes the future where the Israelites or Yasharites, along with the king they appointed, will be exiled to a foreign land unknown to them and their ancestors. Right? And it's talking about, you know, they normally try to interpret this as the Babylonian stage, and because it talks about us going into a unknown land that we knew nothing about, but we knew about the Babylonian land. You know, we knew about the Babylonians, right? We knew about that. So it's not. This is a future prophecy. So this is what it means by. This is what. Let me make sure I want you guys to understand this. This is why it's important to understand that David, your king, or your prince, should I say, because Yahweh is your king. David and the Israelites and the high priest and the priesthood are in that bloodline, that seed that shall be restored and appointed and anointed. They're going to be risen back up and restored from captivity that we are all in, not from the ground, not from the sky. You're living among your anointed ones, right? But you just got to look at the signs and pay attention and see who's being upright, who's doing righteous things and leading you back to Yahweh and to the truth. You know, not just our language and writing books and you know and going on and having debates and having YouTube channels and being successful and that, you know, that's all popularity. You know, that's judgment. That's judgment from the eyes, not from the heart, right? Yahweh judges the heart alone, not the eyes, right? So if you pay attention truly to what's really going on, then you can take heed and consider who's for Yahweh and who's not. You know, but this is why that's happening though, because it's prophesied that the prince, commonly called the king, Messiah, and the house of Zadok, the high priest, and the priesthood, they will rise from their people in captivity. This is why you got so many people trying to emulate